Hello and welcome to the Rosa Talksball podcast, episode 2. We are back after another big few weeks in women's sport, and today's pod will be split into two parts. The second will be focusing on the latest events in women's sport, where I will be offering my opinions and insights. But first and foremost, today's guest is Danielle McGahey, who was the first and now only trans woman to compete in international cricket when she represented Canada. We decided to have this interview off the back of an ICC rule change a few weeks ago, which means no trans women can now compete in international cricket. For me, it's so important to raise a light to these issues, as I can't call myself an LGBTQ plus ally and not speak out about these huge decisions which will impact the community. But I wanted to make sure I did so in a place that called for education and change, so getting Danielle on was the perfect solution. I hope you enjoy our chat, and let's get to it. I am delighted to welcome Danielle McGahey to the podcast. Hello, Danielle. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm all good, thanks. Where in the world are you joining us from?
I'm currently in Rio de Janeiro. Got down here yesterday in Brazil, so pretty good.
Much warmer than where I am currently, I assume.
Yeah, it's getting up to 30 today. It's pretty toasty.
Pretty toasty. So we are here today to talk about the recent ICC announcement that trans women have been banned from the international level of the game. And you were the first and now only trans woman to play international cricket. First of all, where did your cricket journey start?
So my cricket journey started a long time ago. I first picked up a bat when I was 6 years old in country Victoria, Australia, and started playing in my hometown of Timor. Yeah, basically played there throughout school, and then when I was 17, I moved to Melbourne and started playing cricket at a higher level down in Melbourne. Um, I played there until I was 26, and I moved to Canada. Um, I moved to Saskatchewan, Canada, which for anyone who doesn't know is in the middle of nowhere. And at that point in time, I transitioned, and I'd actually like given up cricket altogether. I didn't even know there was cricket in Saskatchewan, and I just happened to stumble across a cricket pitch in the middle of a park, and I was like, "Well, that means there has to be cricket here, surely." And so I contacted the men's team that play there, and started playing. And since I'd already started transitioning, they were like really, really supportive, and they were like, really, yep, okay, we have a girl on the team now, and like we need to understand that. So I played for a season, and then they were like, okay, well, there's a girls' team 14 hours away if you would like to go play there. And so we ended up having to drive the 14 hours to go play some games. And that's when I first got introduced to a lot of the women's players that I'll be playing with over the next coming years. And it was an amazing like experience because they just took me in with open arms. And I think that says a lot about the community that is cricket. So yeah, I started playing at a lower level with the women in Alberta, in Canada, and quickly got called up to the provincial team and went and played at nationals. We managed to win somehow. It was super over in the final, bit of a crazy experience. And that got me the call up to play for Canada. And I played in some unofficial matches in Brazil in 2022. And fantastic experience. Got to know a lot of like the Brazilian, the Argentinian team, and a lot of the girls from Peru. And then basically, yeah, went back to Canada, had another season, and then we had World Cup qualifiers, which was in Los Angeles a couple of months ago now. And that's kind of been my journey. It's been a bit different. It's been long. It's been over a couple of countries, but it's definitely been a really fun one.
I mean, you made history at those qualifiers by, as I said, becoming the first trans woman to compete. What was the response to that? Was it positive? Was it negative? Was it a mix?
So it depends on where you look. Online, it was incredibly mixed. But on the field, it was incredibly positive, both with my own teammates and with the opposition. Um, part of the reason I'm in Brazil at the moment is that I'm training with the Brazilian national team. And so there's a lot of respect amongst all of the players. I had the support of the ICC, and from everything I could tell, at least like the level around me, it was really supportive. But then obviously online, a lot of people say a lot of things, and it definitely looked a lot more mixed. But yeah, my experience was really, really positive.
I think that's quite telling, isn't it? That the people who you were playing with and alongside had no problem with the fact that you are trans, but the internet warriors do.
Yeah, that was, it's a real bit of backlash because like you see the hate online, and then all of a sudden like you're out sharing a drink with someone, or, after playing a game, and you're just another player, and it's such a positive experience. Like that's the thing. I've had players from all over the world reach out to me after the decision made by the ICC, sending condolences and support and love. And you definitely feel that inside the cricketing community. And so, yeah, it's a bit different.
For sure. I think it's very important to say that you completely fulfilled all of the criteria from the ICC to enable you to play, which was brought in 2018 and reviewed in 2021. And yeah, there wasn't any problem with you playing at the time. No one you were playing with thought it was a problem. So what do you think led to the ICC making that decision?
So I know the decision wasn't a snap decision, and it wasn't based on my participation. I know they were having a review when I put my paperwork in to go through the eligibility criteria that was currently set up. I've had a meeting with the ICC about the future of the regulations, and the idea was not a ban on any trans women who'd gone through puberty. That was not the idea at the time. And I did this interview in June. So I think what it is a lot of social pressure, with a lot of major other sports also putting in bans. And I know the ICC copped a lot of backlash for my participation, even though I was still falling within the criteria that the ICC had in place. I think there's definitely a lot of social pressure, and I don't fully understand it, because trans women and trans men, we're just people, and we're just trying to live our lives, and no one transitions to gain an advantage in sport. That's not how it works.
Those who may be wondering what the criteria was, could you explain it for them?
Yeah, of course. So the criteria was based on blood work. So one of the first pieces was you had to have testosterone levels under 5 nanomoles per liter for a period of 12 months. You had to be tested every single month to make sure you're in compliance. And that way you ensure that, the strength advantage that is stated doesn't exist. And to be honest, it just doesn't. But the other criteria was that you're living your life as yourself. Like you're not doing it, in a way that's not ethical. And so those were the two major criterias. But they also took a lot more information regarding me. So like that was stage 1. Stage 2 were things like body composition, fat and muscle distribution and percentages, any surgery, any like they have a lot of information, and that's how they were able to make their decision. A 3-person board sat, and they made the decision that I was eligible based on the criteria, and that's how it was.
The stuff at grassroots level, that is the priority. I think that the hate that this is going to cause throughout all levels of the game is scary to think about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's why I think Cricket Australia have done the right thing and have put a statement out saying that they will not change their eligibility criteria when it comes to transgender athletes, even up to the WBBL. And so it's a clear stance that, regardless of this decision the ICC have made, trans people are still welcome in cricket in Australia. And I know the ECB have more of a rolling, we're reviewing it policy, and they've had that quite a few years now, and it's sort of more of a case by case. But yeah, the message that this sends from the ICC it is one that's a little scary because, like I said, we just want to play sport and we want to live our lives like anyone else. There's nothing more sinister or anything to it. We just want to live lives, right?
I think something which a lot of people fail to understand, and a lot of the backlash when they say, but it's not grassroots cricket, it's not happening in grassroots cricket, is that the ICC are the overriding body. Whatever they say is going to impact people's views on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also has an effect on the transgender player. I know for a fact that like I didn't start playing women's cricket until I would have met the ICC's international criteria, and that was just for me to be like, okay, I fit. Like if this is the overarching rule and policy for me, it was important that I felt like I fit. And now I don't think there's going to be many trans players who look at it and be like, well, I belong, or this is worth chasing, or there is no top level anymore. The top level is domestic circuit, and that's as far as it can go. Um, I'm really like, yeah, I'm hoping that clubs do accept trans players, like clubs across the world, wherever they are, because yeah, we're just people, and the ICC have sent a message basically saying that no, these people don't belong, and if you're a women's team and you have a trans women player, then you've got a target on your back, and it's not great.
And it also puts this massive barrier in terms of where people see themselves, as you've said. I mean, I know that there's a number of teams who are LGBTQ plus inclusive in the UK, but that is quite rare in terms of there's only 4 or 5 really prominent teams at the moment, and it's kind of a nation to nation basis. You don't see it elsewhere.
Yeah, I guess I can't really talk for anything other than Canada cricket. But I know a lot of the clubs are really, really supportive of having queer and transgender players, and I think a lot of that's to do with society in Canada. It is definitely a lot more progressive than for instance in Australia, where I grew up. So yeah, I really do hope that clubs do promote the fact that they are LGBTQ plus positive, because it just means that as a player, you can walk in and know you're safe. And I think that's so important.
If there isn't that level of inclusivity, I guess that people don't get the opportunities. And without the opportunities and the increased opportunities, there's not going to be a difference. I agree. I think it's really important. I think the other thing is when the announcement was made, the response online was very mixed in terms of whether A, people were completely against the ICC decision, B, whether people were with the ICC position, not coming from a place of hate, but coming from a place of maybe lack of education, and C, the people who just used it as a massive chance to pile on trans women. What did you take from that?
Yeah, like you said, it was definitely a huge mixed bag. So there was a lot of support, like I said, from the cricketing community itself. And then, yeah, there was also a lot of confusion about what is a trans woman. And I will talk about trans women in this case, not trans men, but the effect of hormone replacement therapy really isn't aware in the general public from what I could tell. Like my Instagram turned into a bit of a place for everyone to have a debate, which was awfully strange. But once you start taking estrogen and suppressing testosterone, your body changes a lot. And after, like, I've been on hormones now for 2.5 years, and I don't have any strength. Like my strength is really, really comparable to cis women. Yeah, like I said, I'm training with the Brazilian girls at the moment, and they can all lift more than me. They can all run faster than me. They can all jump higher. It's a little embarrassing, to be honest. But The education when it comes to what hormone replacement therapy does is really lacking in the general public, and that's something I'd love to try and change because there's this idea that I saw it a lot. A trans woman is a man in a wig, and that's not what it is. That is not what being trans is, and some of those comments are pretty hurtful, but I think ultimately it comes from a place of not having education in what trans medicine is, and that's a much more like societal based learning that needs to occur.
I agree. You could kind of see the trend as quite generational as well from the negativity, and also a lot of it was based on location of where people were and the views around them and what they're being taught in their school systems by their governments. I think it is really important to make people understand that it is more straightforward than it looks, but you need to be educated.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I can honestly say that before I started my journey, I wasn't educated on it either. Like I really didn't know anything about trans people in general, and it's definitely been a learning experience. But it's one that can be had, and I think the younger generation is doing it right, and they are taking the time to learn about their fellow human beings, and I think that's what life and learning and friends and everything. That's what it's all about, right?
How, if you don't mind me asking, how was that journey of transition for you personally?
Personally, I've had a really, really good transition in terms of I still have a lot of friends. Socially, it didn't change too much. The only real negative was I did lose my family through the process. So my parents stopped talking to me pretty quickly. But overall, it's been really, really positive. I was able to access trans medicine relatively easy in Canada. And I definitely live a happier and more stable life now because I finally feel like, my body matches my brain, and I just feel like I'm the right person for me now. I don't hide away anymore. I'm just really outgoing and, positive about who I am. And all of that is due to transition.
I think the most important thing is that you're happy. That you're happy, you're in a better place. I think that's at the end of the day, people can have opinions, people can argue, but all that matters is that you're comfortable in your own skin.
Well, that's it, and that's why you transition. Like that is why to better match who you are, and not have to hide away. Yeah, I honestly couldn't be happier in life. So it's pretty cool.
Do you want to see happen next from the ICC, from the cricket boards, further from the governments? Like, what education do you want to see put in place to help people's understanding?
I would really love the ICC to put the time into understanding trans people better, and I say that because I don't think there is a clear understanding of the effect of hormone replacement therapy. And I think the ban on trans women post puberty is purely to match other sports and social hysteria. And so I would love for the cricket boards around the world to come out like Cricket Australia has and say we support trans women and trans athletes, and that we will continue to create an environment that is safe and welcoming. The ICC obviously have said they'll review in 2 years, but 2 years is a long time, and I'm hoping to continue working with the ICC with regards to creating a policy that better fits the trans community, because right now it's not fair on trans women, and I'm nearly at the end of my career. I'm nearly 30, so I've only got a few playing years left. But for me, it's more important about the 16-year-old trans woman who's just come out, loves playing cricket, and now suddenly feels that maybe they're not safe. And I really want in the future that that individual can go chase their dream and not have to put a ceiling on it. And a lot of that falls with the ICC, but boards themselves can do a huge amount by saying that this is a safe place. You are respected as a human, and you can play cricket. and be part of the community. So that's what cricket's about.
I agree. I think something which frustrated me when they made the announcement was the language which they used surrounding it. When they said that by making this ban, they were protecting the integrity of women's cricket, which for me is a statement which isn't made with good intention. I don't know how you feel about that.
Um, I'm really trying not to have too much of an opinion on the ICC's announcement because I don't want it to look like it's coming from a place, of bitterness or anything like this. But I can quote an article by Wisden Cricket, and that is, this is a ban put in place on the back of one girl playing 6 matches, averaging 19 with a strike rate of 92. It doesn't seem like the integrity of cricket is an issue. So it's pretty wild, because I'm the only trans woman to play international, and I don't think my inclusion caused any issues with the integrity of cricket. Game still went ahead as per normal. I was just another player, and that's kind of it. The wording definitely seemed to come from a place of we were already planning on doing this, and yeah. Like I said, I'm trying not to have too much opinion on the ICC's statement.
How involved were you with the ICC decision? You said that you had an interview in June. Was that the last time you spoke to them about it? Was there more of a open communication? How was that?
So no, that was the last time I spoke about the future of the rules. Where basically they came to me and said, okay, there is a rule change that will be coming up in approximately December. What we're looking at the moment is halving the testosterone limit and doubling the time that you're required to be under that limit. And they explained it from the place of safety, integrity, and inclusion. And this is basically the same statement that they used, when they made this policy change. That was the last time I spoke with them regarding the future of the rules. Obviously, I had a lot of communication getting me meeting the eligibility in order to play in September. And then they did call me a week ahead of the rule change, with what they were going to do. And even just on a basic human level, that's really appreciated because it wasn't being broken by the BBC. I was informed by the ICC themselves.
It feels like quite a significant jump from let's change the criteria to completely cutting off all trans women. And it feels as though that it was a decision maybe based a little bit on social pressure from other sports, as well as their own investigation, because we saw in cycling, we've seen in swimming.
It feels like they're just falling in line with the other sports and not, making their own decisions. And I think that's why I continue to talk with the ICC, and I will continue to do so in order to better shape policy, because I don't think it's right, and I think it's based on a lot of social hysteria. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. For me, like I said, it's the next generation of trans kids that potentially have a future in cricket stolen from them because of this. And it's really that's what's upset me the most. My career was never going to last very long. I'm old, and that's fine. But it's all about making a path and trying to help other people and try and inspire some people to make positive change.
Yeah, I mean, without speaking about these issues, change literally is impossible, because without raising this platform and openly stating your views, stating the views of whole cricketing communities, there's not going to be any progress.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, it's so disheartening because it felt like we were moving in the right direction. And the amount of support I had from the ICC in America was amazing. The two top officials looked after me every step of the way. And it was like, okay, well, it's amazing. And suddenly we're going backwards. And so, yeah.
I just want to thank you again for coming on today and sharing your thoughts with me and with my listeners.
No, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and can't wait to be back on the podcast in the future.
We'll definitely have you back on soon. Before I move on to the second part of the podcast, I just wanted to build on what me and Danielle were discussing regarding the grassroots cricket. It has been incredible to see so many of the cricket clubs I follow on social media posting statements making it clear to trans individuals that their club is inclusive. And all that I ask is that that continues. It's so important to make this community feel heard, feel seen, and make cricket as inclusive as it possibly can be. Now, moving on to the updates in women's sport. First and foremost, we have our WBBL 09 champions, and for the second year in a row, it is the Adelaide Strikers. They beat the Brisbane Heat in front of 12,379 spectators at the Adelaide Oval last Saturday. First of all, another record crowd for a women's sports match. This time, it's the record crowd for a women's cricket game in Adelaide. It's so good to see. What a game of cricket, my word. I mean, when you're strikers and you only put 125 on the board, and you look at Heat batting lineup of the Harris sisters, Georgia Redmayne, Amelia Kerr, Mignon, Charlie Knott, you have to think, how are they defending that total? But they did. They restricted the Heat to 123, an absolute nail-biter. And my standout player of that final has to be Amanda Jade Wellington, who took 3 for 16 from 4 overs, bowling the last over as a spinner. The pressure which was on her shoulders to deliver in that moment in Adelaide, in front of a predominantly strikers crowd, was massive. But what was amazing is that it didn't even affect her. She looked so calm. And the latest revelation surrounding Amanda is that she has revealed she could represent England in international cricket if she chose to. Her and Australia is an ongoing debate. She has been one of the players of the tournament, the standout players, for years and years now, but never gets a look in that international side. And I think genuinely that that's ridiculous. But when I look at the England team, and I look at the young spinning trio of Charlie Dean, Sarah Glenn, Sophie Eccleston, number one T20 bowler in the world, I genuinely don't see how it would be any easier for her to get into that team. I just don't think that change is going to be as beneficial as maybe is thought by a lot of people, because you're still in that competitive environment. There's so many young spinners coming through as well through the England A setup, that when you've got 3 world-class spin bowlers who constantly step up in an international shirt, it's going to be very difficult for anyone, including other English players, to step above them. So I understand why the comment was made. I understand that it could be a viable option, but for me personally, I don't see that benefiting her in the grander scheme of things. Second of all, UEFA have made 2 very big announcements this week. First and foremost, they are introducing an expert panel to study ACL injuries in women's footballers. A lot of people may be wondering what an ACL is, what an ACL injury is. The ACL, otherwise known as the anterior cruciate ligament, is a tough band of tissue which joins the thigh bone to the shin bone at the knee joint, and it runs diagonally through the inside of the knee and gives the knee joint stability. And when you tear your ACL, whether that be partially or fully, your knee ends up becoming very unstable. It becomes weaker and it loses its full range of movement. And these injuries tend to be caused by a sudden change in direction, which is why they're very common in sports like football and netball, because you're constantly turning, you're constantly pivoting around the ball, around other people. And they are also much more common in women than they are in men. This new panel has already started with an injury awareness questionnaire for all of the members of the women's football community. This aims to gather insights into the injuries and their patterns, and the initiative is forming the centrepiece of a much wider ACL injury awareness campaign, which looks like it will begin in the later part of 2024. There is an account on Twitter which, if you're passionate about this issue, I recommend you follow, which is at ACLWFC, and they share data regarding ACL injuries within women's football, and according to them, there have been around 280 confirmed ACL injuries since January last year, and that's in the women's football top leagues across the world. Now, when you look at an ACL injury and the intense rehab which is behind it, these athletes are out of action for 9 to 12 months. It's terrifying that there's so many of these injuries occurring, and it's disappointing that it's taken so long for the top bodies to discuss these issues, but I'm very glad it is finally happening. There's so many factors which could mean that they're more common in women than men. For example, less resources, worse strength and conditioning, worse facilities, worse grass conditions, using men's boots. But it's really difficult to decide which it is, and we're not going to know that unless research happens, because there will be preventable methods. I can tell you what they are. I'm not a scientist, but there will be preventable methods which can stop these injuries taking place. But you're not going to discover them if you don't research them. So I'm so glad that that panel is finally coming into place and this is happening. Second of all, UEFA are also introducing a new Women's Champions League format for the 2025 to 2026 season onwards, and this includes a second-tier European tournament for women. This new format of the first tier will feature a league stage which consists of 18 clubs, which is 2 more than the current structure. The teams will no longer play 3 opponents twice, but instead will face fixtures against 6 different sides in the league stage, playing half of those matches at home and half of them away. UEFA have said that this change in format means that without increasing the number of games at the league stage, top clubs will play each other more often and earlier, meaning all sides experience competitive matches and a variety of opponents. The second tier format will have a straight knockout format, meaning more teams can compete in Europe. It also means that the teams who get knocked out in the early rounds of the UEFA Women's Champions League get another chance at playing in a continental competition, so they would drop down into the second tier. We don't know the name yet of the second tier, none of that has been revealed. This is very early stages. But I think it's a really good move. It increases playing opportunities for women, which is, of course, always something I'm going to be striving for and passionate about. I think it's interesting that they're making it very clear that the workload isn't going to increase for the first tier with an increase of opponents. I think it's positive in terms of it looks like they're finally listening to the athletes that they play too much football, because these big injuries, a lot of them are as a result to overworking. So yeah, I'm really happy with UEFA this week, which is a rarity for me. It will be interesting to see how these things develop and where they now go. But really looking forward to seeing these developments and watching this panel and the second tier and new Champions League format come to light over the next few weeks, seasons, years, however long it takes. Another big headline maker this week has been that Team GB will not be competing at the 2024 Olympics in Paris in the women's football. For those who don't know, England were in charge of securing qualification for Team GB. They also found themselves in the same group as Scotland, which has been very controversial because obviously if England qualified, that means Scotland players get given the opportunity to represent Team GB. The last game saw England playing Scotland and England having to win by a 3-goal margin to beat the Netherlands on goal difference. To me, I genuinely don't understand how they ended up in a group together. I think it's unfair that the media has been so critical of Scotland and Scotland's players and Scotland's manager by saying, well, of course they're going to rig it, of course they're going to want to lose this game because they'll want to compete in the Olympics. Questioning the integrity of athletes like that isn't acceptable, but I understand why those questions have been asked, because we should never have found ourselves in a situation where they were in the same group. If that's how UEFA and the Olympic Board want qualification to work, fine, but it's those small details which are really easy to avoid. It was so easy to put Scotland in a different group. Those details are the details which stick and which are spoken about, and they missed out after a last minute, 5th minute of added time Netherlands goal, which is absolutely gutting for all involved. But I do have to say the one positive which can be taken from Team GB being knocked out is that these players will get a proper rest next summer. And we talk a lot about workload and the amount of games these athletes are playing and the amount of tournaments and how it's ridiculous how many fixtures there are. So I genuinely think it will be beneficial for these players to have that proper break. But of course, it doesn't make the disappointment of being knocked out of the Olympics any less. That is all we have time for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you all next time.